The moment that woman stood on my porch, arms crossed, sunglasses on, lips pursed like she was sucking a lemon, I knew she wasn't here to borrow sugar. She looked me straight in the eyes and said the most ridiculous sentence I've ever heard. "You owe the HOA 12 months of dues, and I'm here to collect." That was the exact moment I knew my quiet week was about to become a circus. But what she didn't know, what she had absolutely no clue about, was that the house she lived in, the one she acted like she ruled, the one she thought gave her the power to walk up to my door and bark orders, was sitting on my land lease. She didn't just pick the wrong fight. She signed the eviction notice on her own arrogance. This is the story of how the neighborhood HOA Karen sued me over unpaid dues, only for the truth to explode in court like a wildfire, and how she learned the hard way that playing power games on land you don't own is basically self-destruction with paperwork. When all of this started, I genuinely thought I'd moved into a peaceful community. Quiet lawns, tidy houses, neighbors who waved, kids biking around. It seemed perfect. For the first 8 months, not a single issue. No letters, no warnings, no complaints. Just normal suburban life. Then Karen arrived. Not moved in arrived. Oh no, she'd lived here for years, but arrived in the sense that she suddenly decided she was the queen of the HOA and needed everyone to bow. I was just unlucky enough to become her project. The first sign of trouble came when she knocked on my door one morning while I was sipping my coffee. She looked irritated before I even opened the door. "Are you aware you're behind on your HOA dues?" she demanded. I blinked, confused. I wasn't part of the HOA. My property was not listed under their association, and I'd made sure of that before buying. I calmly told her, "I'm not an HOA member." That's when she went full steam. "Everyone is a member. Your address is inside our boundaries. If you don't pay, we'll take legal action." She actually said it like she practiced it in a mirror. I could hear the imaginary applause. I repeated it politely. "I'm not part of your HOA. My land is separately zoned." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd pop out. "I'll send you the official letter," she snapped, then marched off like a toy soldier with malfunctioning hinges. Within a week, the nightmare began. Letters, notices, printed emails, a $600 fine for non-payment, a $100 late fee, then a $50 administration fee. My trash bin was misaligned, my grass was too natural, and apparently my dog barked at unacceptable hours. I don't have a dog. At first, I tried to stay calm. I tried to reason with them. I sent copies of my deed, my zoning documents, everything showing my property was not part of their HOA. They ignored all of it. Karen escalated. She started holding meetings where she'd talk about me like I was some neighborhood villain destroying the purity of the community. One of my neighbors whispered to me that she even said I was setting a dangerous precedent by refusing dues. A dangerous precedent? What was I going to do? Start a rebellion of people who preferred minding their own business? But the worst part wasn't even the harassment. It was the fact that she was so determined to control me that she didn't even bother to check one tiny detail: the land lease beneath her own home. See, my property was weirdly shaped, kind of like a big L. The house she lived in? It sat on the short arm of that L. Decades ago, the developer leased part of the land to the HOA for 99 years, but that lease had expired completely and legally 8 years ago. And guess who bought that land after the lease expired? Me. I didn't even know at first. My lawyer pointed it out during a meeting. I remember staring at the document, blinking in disbelief. Karen's home, her pride, her castle of authority. It was literally sitting on my land, not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically, legally, measurably, on my ground. I didn't want problems. I didn't want to be the bad guy. So I tried one more time. I walked to her house, knocked on her door, and tried to explain everything.
She refused to open the door. Instead, she yelled from behind it, "You need to learn respect for authority. You're not special." That was it. I had tried. She didn't want peace. She wanted war. And she was about to get a battle she didn't even know she was equipped to lose. 2 weeks later, I received a lawsuit summons. Karen and the HOA were officially suing me for unpaid dues, late fees, community disruption, and non-compliance. They wanted almost $3,800 from me in total. I stared at the paper, laughing in disbelief. Then I did what any rational person would do. I countersued. But not for money, no. I sued to remove the HOA's claim to the land underneath her home and to dissolve any remaining illegal encroachment. Essentially, I asked the court to acknowledge that her home was improperly stationed on my property and that I had the right to enforce the lease termination however I deemed appropriate, including eviction. When the day of court arrived, I walked in calm. Karen marched in like she was entering the season finale of a reality show. She wore a bright red blazer, because of course she did, and carried a binder labeled HOA evidence. She glared at me like she expected me to crumble. Instead, I smiled. Courtrooms do funny things to egos, especially when the truth is about to land like a meteor. Her lawyer opened with a dramatic speech about responsibility, community standards, and how I was a threat to neighborhood order. He made me sound like a supervillain whose evil plan was refusing $45 monthly dues. Then it was my turn. My lawyer slid the land records across the table so calmly it could have been a dinner menu. "Your Honor, the defendant does not owe dues, but more importantly, the plaintiff's home rests on land belonging to my client. The HOA's lease expired years ago. They have no legal authority to impose dues or enforce regulations on property they do not own." Karen went pale. Not white, not gray, pale like she'd seen the ghost of every bad decision she ever made. The judge raised an eyebrow. Then he asked the HOA lawyer, "Did your association verify the land boundaries before suing?" The lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. No answer. The judge examined the paperwork for what felt like an eternity, then he sighed. "The HOA has no legal claim. The defendant owes nothing. Additionally, the countersuit is valid. The plaintiff's home is encroaching on land owned by my client. The court recognizes his legal right to enforce removal, compensation, or renegotiation." Karen didn't just lose. She imploded. Everything she thought made her powerful, her authority, her control, her self-appointed status of queen of the neighborhood, was all gone in a single sentence. You could hear her gasp. It wasn't just shock. It was fear. Real fear. The kind you feel when life suddenly tilts and you realize you never had the high ground you were standing on. After court, she ran up to me in the hallway. Tears filled her eyes, not gentle ones, angry ones. "You can't do this. You can't take my home." I looked at her, genuinely feeling a mix of frustration and a little sympathy. "Karen, I tried to talk to you. I tried to explain everything. You sued me. I didn't want this." She shook her head like a stubborn child. "I was just doing my job. I'm the HOA president." I took a breath. "You're the HOA president of land you don't own." That's when she broke. Not physically, not dramatically, but emotionally. Her shoulders slumped. Her voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do? Everything I own is in that house." I could have evicted her. I could have made her move the home. I could have demanded rent. Legally, I had every right, but I'm not a monster. I offered her a deal. The HOA could lease the land again for a fair price and under 2 conditions. 1, no more harassment. 2, acknowledgement that my property was outside their control. She took the deal faster than she'd ever attacked me. And the funniest part, after the new contract, the HOA quietly removed her as president. Turns out, when you cost the organization tens of thousands in legal fees, they don't want you in charge anymore. Today, she still lives in that house. She avoids eye contact. She doesn't knock on my door anymore. And the HOA? They never send me letters. Not one. Not even a warning about my too natural grass. Every time I walk past her street, I remember the day she stood at my door demanding dues I never owed. She thought she had power. She thought she could bully me. She thought she understood the rules. But what she didn't know, what she never expected, was that her entire home was sitting on land she didn't control. And when you try to rule territory that doesn't belong to you, eventually the real owner steps forward. This time, that owner was me. If you're watching this and you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, a power-hungry neighbor, or someone who thinks rules only exist to benefit them, let this be your reminder. Know your rights, know your land, and never, ever let a Karen with a clipboard intimidate